Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. Qin Mu picked this Solomon seal and flipped him over to examine him. The other Solomon seals popped their heads out from under the leaves, sands, and crevices. When they saw a giant picking up their comrade, they couldn't help crying out in alarm before hiding even deeper without any spirit of loyalty. Qin Mu examined the little human in detail and saw that the legs of this Solomon seal were formed by numerous entwining roots. Around his waist was a skirt weaved from grass, and on his face was a root-like beard. His hand was holding onto a spear made from a bamboo branch. The tip of the spear was snow-bright and was a special kind of metal. Qin Mu couldn't help being astonished and pinched the delicate spear, which was like a needle, examining the metal on the spearhead in detail. He couldn't see what metal it was formed from, but what was strange was that there were traces of imprinted runes on it. From the outfits of these Solomon seals, it was impossible for them to be proficient in things like runes and spells. So where had the metal on the spear come from? The Solomon seal seemed to wake up, for it began to shiver. Suddenly, a green sprout popped out from his head. He was really nervous, so the sprout grew very fast. Qin Mu smiled. "Stop playing dead. I won't eat you, I just have some questions to ask you." The Solomon seal mustered his courage and opened his eyes. However, when he saw Qin Mu's smile and his shiny teeth, he couldn't help crying out in alarm and fainting again. Fierce shouts came from the island as some 100 Solomon seals came rushing out aggressively. It was evident that they were the rescue troop, but when they saw Qin Mu pinching their comrade, these Solomon seals immediately turned in the other direction and ran away. Qin Mu was startled and shook his head. There's really no spirit of loyalty. He flicked the leaf on the Solomon seal's head, and the little human woke up once again. Qin Mu let go of him and lifted him up with his vital chi, making him float in front of the three of them. "Stop playing dead, do it again and you will really die. Let me ask you, why are there so many Solomon seals on this island?" That Solomon seal shivered and said, "I don't know, you will have to ask the Ancestor." Qin Mu frowned and asked, "Where did your spearheads come from?" "I don't know, you will have to ask the Ancestor." Helpless, Qin Mu placed the little human down and said, "Bring us to meet your Ancestor." When this Solomon seal landed on the ground, he started walking into the island. A small head then popped out from the grass nearby and scolded him angrily, "Betrayer." Qin Mu stretched his hand out and grabbed that Solomon seal out from the grass as well. "You will lead the way as well, bring us to see your Ancestor." This Solomon seal immediately complied and hung his head down in shame to become a betrayer, walking into the island with the other betrayer by his side. That Solomon seal next to him instantly lifted his head up high as if it was glorious for him to have been the first to surrender. There are too many Solomon seals on this island. Cai Yunxiang was astonished. When they came to the center of the island, they noticed houses hanging on the trees, and they were all very delicate, not much bigger than a bird's nests. They were weaved by vines which were made into the shapes of houses to hang under the branches. From afar, they looked like green apples. The group walked over, and the doors of these houses in the trees opened. Numerous Solomon seals sneaked glances at them. It was like a strange world on the tree. On the ground, there were numerous houses constructed from small rocks by the Solomon seals. A city was created, but it was only 6 hours big. The 2 Solomon seals walked into the lifeless city, and the soldiers that were guarding the city just stared at the 3 giants in a daze. They were speechless from astonishment and didn't even retaliate. There are probably tens of thousands of Solomon seal here. Cai Yunxiang couldn't leave her state of shock, and she whispered, "Cult Master, if you captured all these Solomon seals, your wealth would rival that of an empire if you sold them." Qin Mu stopped outside the city and didn't enter. He shook his head. "Why should I do that?" Cai Yunxiang was bewildered. "The weak are prey to the strong, isn't that the rule of great ruins?" "Saintess, the predatory behavior of great ruins is slightly different from what you imagine," Qin Mu explained. "Even though the strange beasts of great ruins hunt and feed on the weak, they wouldn't do any unnecessary killing once they are full. This is a predatory behavior, not the killing of everything that's weaker than me. These Solomon seals are also life forms with intelligence and have founded their own civilization and nation. Since we have come into their territory, we will have to interact as civilized people with civilized people. How could we just eradicate their country and eliminate their people the moment we come here? Sai Yunxiang looked pensive. Not long later, numerous Solomon seals surrounded a carriage which came driving out from a dazzling mansion in the city. On the carriage was an old woman with white hair. She stood up shakily and greeted them. "It has been a while since we have seen outsiders, so we small people are a little flustered. I'm here to pay my respects to you." "Elder is polite." Qin Mu returned the greeting respectfully. "This foolish brother and sisters have passed by your land and alarmed your people. We seek your forgiveness." Ling Yuxiu and Sai Yunxiang saw that this Solomon seal old woman was also only a feet tall. She was pitifully small, yet Qin Mu still showed his etiquette and didn't dare to neglect her. This made them unable to restrain their smiles. Soon, the two girls also greeted the woman according to the etiquette. The Solomon seal old woman said, "My humble home is too small and will be hard to accommodate the bodies of 3 giants, so I can't invite the 3 of you to come in, pardon me. The 3 of you are just passing by." Qin Mu smiled. "The 3 of us were passing by and planned to rest our legs, but because we saw your distinguished country being so unusual, we came to disturb. May I ask, Elder, why are there so many Solomon seals here?" The old woman smiled. "It should be because of the water and land. When I woke up, I was beside a spring and I suddenly had intelligence. From then, we started flourishing and that resulted in more and more small people." "A spring?" Astonished, Qin Mu asked, "Can Elder lead us there to have a look?" The Solomon seal old woman smiled. "Of course." When she said that, she ordered the other Solomon seals to drive the carriage out of the city and brought them to the front of a spring. This spring wasn't huge and was only a deep pond that had a radius of 20 yards, however, it was too deep to see its bottom. There was numerous Solomon seal fetching water from this spring, but no matter how much water they fetched, there was no difference in the pond. Qin Mu picked some spring water and opened Green Heaven's eyes to have a look. His expression turned grave when he saw a strange power contained within. It was extraordinary. The Solomon seals on the island must have consumed the water here all year round and turned into spirits because of that. Furthermore, there was no demon air on their bodies. This is not an ordinary spring, Ling Yuxiu and Sai Yunxiang thought to themselves as they had also noticed the peculiarity. Qin Mu rose and asked, "I saw that your weapons are also slightly unusual. May I ask where you got them from?" The Solomon seal old woman said, "These items were all picked up by these children. They were flushed out by the spring." "Flushed out by the spring?" Qin Mu looked at this deep pond and muttered to himself for a moment before saying, "Elder, we would like to go into the pond to take a look. Even though you guys might be giants, you will still have to be careful. The depths of this pond are beyond measurement and many of my children have drowned here." The Solomon seal old woman immediately summoned people over and said, "I'll order them to fetch long vines. The 3 of you will be able to wrap them around your bodies before going down. Once you'll no longer be able to hold your breath, you'll be able to come back up by following the vine." "There's no need for that." Qin Mu took in a deep breath and gales rushed towards him from all directions. After an immeasurable amount of air was sucked into his chest, he leaped into the pond. Ling Yuxiu and Sai Yunxiang also immediately took in a deep breath and leaped in. The 3 of them then executed their techniques. Ling Yuxiu cultivated 9 dragons monarch technique, so she swam like a flood dragon. Sai Yunxiang executed heavenly god creation technique and darted around like a fish in water, swimming toward the bottom of the pond. This place was actually so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. After diving for some time, their surroundings became dimmer and dimmer, yet they still didn't reach the bottom. The pressure of the water was also becoming greater and greater. Suddenly, light appeared in front of them, and they saw the 4 walls of the pond gradually becoming wider. There were luminous pearls on them that they're the size of wicker baskets and gave off a dim glow. They are even bigger than the luminous pearls in the Imperial Palace. Ling Yuxiu cried out in astonishment. As they went farther down, more luminous pearls appeared. After diving several hundred yards down, they finally felt the pressure becoming so heavy that their lungs were going to concave. Their eyes became bloodshot, and their eardrums hummed. If they were to dive down some more, their lives would probably be in danger. But just as Qin Mu wanted to stop the two girls and return back, a huge cauldron caught his eye. They had finally reached the bottom of the pond. A huge cauldron sat there, and it was dozens of yards wide. There were weak currents pouring out from its center while the surroundings of the cauldron were empty, without any water. Instead, there was air surrounding the cauldron, and it was bright as day. Qin Mu swam over there and passed through the water screen. His body instantly fell downwards, and he hurriedly landed on his 2 feet. Ling Yuxiu and Cai Yunxiang also swam out from the water and landed on the ground, their bodies drenched. Qin Mu took a glance, and Cai Yunxiang immediately hugged her chest, only to see Ling Yuxiu not noticing anything. She immediately nudged her with her shoulder and said in a low voice, "He's looking at you." Ling Yuxiu only then came to a realization and hurriedly turned around, using vital qi to shake the water off her body. Qin Mu retracted his gaze and thought to himself, "It's not like I haven't seen it before. I already saw it when she slept over at my place last time, but so what if her chest is bigger and fairer than mine, her strength is still inferior to mine." The 3 of them dried their clothes and started to look around. This place had to be the bottom of the sea, and surrounding them on the outside was the pitch-black sea water. They could even see chimneys on the seafloor giving off black smoke and spewing out a trail of lava once in a while. From time to time, the strange creatures in the sea would swim over after being attracted by the bright lights here, revealing their humongous bodies. However, the group didn't know what kind of monster they were. In front of them, there were marble pillars standing tall and giving off a tranquil glow. When they walked forward some more, they could see pure white fog and a faint huge palace hiding within it. Below their feet was white jade that was built quite smoothly, but the rubble was scattered everywhere. There were several pillars surrounding the cauldron which was behind them, so this place should be the ruins of a shrine. Currents rose from the huge cauldron which wasn't linked with the sea. The Solomon seals on the island had drunk the water that was pouring out from this cauldron, and it had given them intelligence. "I have seen such a place before." Qin Mu's heart trembled slightly, and he said, "There is Surging River Dragon Palace in Great Ruins, and its layout is quite similar, but it's much smaller compared to this one. That place was where the Surging River Dragon King lived, the place where the Dragon King managed Surging River. Could this be a dragon palace as well?" Cai Yunxiang was slightly excited. "It's not a dragon palace." Ling Yuxiu shivered and said in a low voice, "I don't feel any air of dragons here. On the contrary, I feel an extremely unpleasant air towards the dragons. There's probably a god here. Even if there's a god, it will be a dead god." Qin Mu walked forward and waved his sleeves. Rubble flew up and landed to the side, revealing a collapsed stone tablet. The words on the stone tablets were very ancient, and they said, "Bent Mountain God Shrine." Bent Mountain God? Qin Mu frowned. Could there be a mountain god at the bottom of the sea? Cai Yunxiang shook her head. It's impossible to have a mountain god at the bottom of the sea, unless this place was above the sea level in the past. When Cai Yunxiang said "until there," she realized what she was saying. Could this place have been above the sea level in the past? That's not right. There isn't such an outrageous change in geography recorded in the history of our sacred cult. Heavenly Devil cult had existed for 20,000 years, and this was considered an extremely long time. Over it, the East Sea had always been the East Sea, and there were no records saying it had once been another continent. As for the history of Eternal Peace Empire, its existence was even shorter, so it was impossible for it to know when the East Sea had transformed. This sea area here is extremely deep, so even divine arts practitioners of 6 directions realm like us would be almost unable to withstand the pressure here. It's probably 3,000 yards deep at the minimum. Qin Mu came to the side of the huge cauldron and stretched out a finger. His vital qi flew out and shot straight upwards. After a moment, he pulled his vital qi back and said with a grave expression, "It's even deeper than I expected, 4,956 yards. Since a mountain god is mentioned, there has to be a mountain on which this shrine was once built. For a mountain to be granted to a god, it must at least be 3,000 yards tall. Cai Yunxiang and Ling Yuxiu immediately knew what he meant. Where Bent Mountain God Shrine was should be Bent Mountain, while the area surrounding it should have been vast fields. After some huge transformation occurred, that land had sunk and become a sea. The place around the Bent Mountain must have sunk 6 to 10,000 yards into the ground. Thinking about it, if an earthquake suddenly shook the entire Eternal Peace Empire and sunk it 10,000 yards in the ground, what situation would that be? This land where Bent Mountain God Shrine stood should have suffered such a terrifying situation. Qin Mu looked around. From his position next to the unreasonably huge cauldron, the owner of this place must have been refining pills when the huge change occurred, thus he didn't have enough time to take out the spirit pills from the huge cauldron. Qin Mu looked at the cauldron and saw that there were broken pieces of metal inside, which should be the weapons that had been shattered. Qin Mu jumped back into the cauldron to check and saw that the spirit weapons were all completely shattered. There was nothing useful that he could find. Instead, the decorative designs on the cauldron caught his attention. They were rune-based, but different from the runes he had seen before. There was a different kind of beauty to them. This cauldron isn't from this era, and these runes are similar to the ones in the ruins of Great Ruins. However, there are also differences. He examined them before jumping out again. Qin Mu dried the water on his body and walked away. Our spirit weapons were all taken away by Long Jianan, so we don't have any suitable weapons and might be in danger. Be careful, everyone. Ling Yuxiu and Cai Yunxiang went after him as Ling Yuxiu said, using our 6 directions divine treasure to give birth to a spirit weapon is more suitable than using other people's spirit weapons. If we could refine a 6 direction spirit weapon, we should be able to protect ourselves. Qin Mu was slightly stunned and asked, how can I give birth to a spirit weapon? He had once heard Xian Qing'e, the great demon, mention such a thing. She had said that spirit weapons were treasures born from 6 directions divine treasure, but he had never understood how a divine treasure could give birth to spirit weapons. He was still lacking in knowledge in regards to 6 directions realm. Cai Yunxiang was astonished. Cult Master, you don't even know this? Nun Hong Fa from Hall of 6 Directions had given a lecture on how to give birth to a spirit weapon in 6 Directions divine treasure before. Qin Mu shook his head and said, I've gone to Hall of 6 Directions only once before, and I got chased out to stand in the corner with you the moment I entered. Cai Yunxiang recalled the incident when she had gotten called out to stand in the corner with Qin Mu and couldn't resist smiling. Ling Yuxiu said, 6 Directions divine treasure giving birth to spirit weapon is actually a vague saying. What 6 direction divine treasure gives birth to is a form of the spirit weapon, only the shape and physical form. As long as you execute your technique, you can see the vital qi gathering in your 6 directions divine treasure to form the shape of a spirit weapon. She formed the shape of her spirit weapon, and the roars of dragons could be heard as 9 of them flew over and danced around her. The heads of the dragons gathered behind her back while the bodies coiled together, transforming into a 5 yards long handle and the head of a hammer that was like a small mountain. Cai Yunxiang had a weird expression. Princess Xiao, your spirit weapon is a hammer. Not only that, Ling Yuxiu said. The path I took is the fusion of battle spells. I'm studying if I can merge battle techniques and spells with 9 dragons monarch technique, so this 9 dragons hammer is one of the forms of my spirit weapon. The 9 dragons can separate to transform into other forms at will. Saintess Xiong, so what's the shape of your spirit weapon? Cai Yunxiang gave a smile and executed her technique. Vital qi flew out from her 6 directions divine treasures and transformed into a thread. That thread had a myriad of changes, weaving and circling around her like a chain as she smiled. This is the shape of my spirit weapon. Cult Master, what's the shape of your spirit weapon? Qin Mu shook his head. My technique of the 6 directions realm isn't perfected, so I still don't know the shape of my spirit weapon. Since you guys only have the shapes of spirit weapons, how do you refine the spirit weapons? As they walked through the fog-covered palace, Ling Yuxiu said, we will need capable and skilled craftsmen to forge our spirit weapon. A good spirit weapon can perfectly match the form of your spirit weapon, unleashing the power of the spirit weapon to its maximum potential. If the craftsmanship isn't good, the spirit weapon might not be able to match the power of the divine arts. I plan to stabilize the shape of my spirit weapon and ask Assistant Minister and the rest to help me forge my spirit weapon. However, the structure of my spirit weapon is complicated and will probably be hard to forge. It's better to cultivate sword skills, so there won't be a need to forge one's own spirit weapon. Any sword pellet would do. Cai Yinxiang said, the skills of Heavenly Works Hall Master are superb, and I also plan to ask him to help me forge my spirit weapon. Mine has many transformations, so it'll also be very difficult to forge. The people the two of them were talking about was the same person. Heavenly Works Hall Master was none other than Assistant Minister Shan Yushin. Qin Mu opened Green Heaven's eyes and walked into the shrine while saying, I can help the both of you, my forging abilities aren't weak as well. I could forge both of your spirit weapons in a day or two if I could only find some gold and iron here. Ling Yuxia was astonished. Divine Physician Sacred Hands, who is proficient in painting, is also proficient in forging. Cai Yinxiang was also very astonished. Cult Master also has attainments in forging. Can't be considered attainments, Qin Mu said humbly. I just know how to beat the metal and exert a little brute force. I passed Grandpa Mute's test in the village by a cheap trick. Grandpa Mute is the most outstanding blacksmith in the villages in our area, and his test was very strict. The two girls looked at each other and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The space in the shrine was vast, and Qin Mu revealed astonishment. He then backed out of the shrine and circled around it, measuring its size with his steps. Ling Yuxia popped her head into the shrine and cried out, so huge! Cai Yinxiang also looked into the shrine and cried out with her eyes wide open, how can it be so huge inside? Qin Mu returned into the shrine and walked quickly along its sides with a pondering expression. The one that herds cows, what's wrong? Ling Yuxia was bewildered. The shrine outside is 9 steps long and 50 steps wide, while inside it is 9,000 steps long and 5,000 steps wide. Qin Mu looked up and saw the ceiling that was as high as the sky. Huge jewels were sculpted to look like stars, and the aspects of the celestial bodies were completely different from the aspects of the celestial bodies now. The stars were about 10,000 yards away from them. Other than the stars, there was also a moon and a sun. Qin Mu didn't know what kind of divine art had created such a treasure, but the sun was still blazing furiously, lighting up the entire shrine. How was this still a shrine? It was clearly a small-scaled world. The space in the shrine is 10,000 times bigger than it looks from the outside. Qin Mu suppressed the pounding of his heart and said solemnly, the position of the sun and moon is in the eye sockets of a divine beast Dao Tai. This shrine is built on top of the divine bones of a Dao Tai which might have even been a god. This is even more powerful than my Dao Tai sack, since this is a pure-blooded Dao Tai. Sister Yuxia, this might be the reason why you were feeling a pressure earlier. Cai Yinxiang's eyes shone with light before becoming dim. What a pity this shrine is too huge and we can't move it. Qin Mu felt the same. What a pity. His gaze landed on the sun and his heart suddenly stirred. This sun is a man-made artifact. I wonder if I could light up the sun on Sun's ship. His heart started to throb violently. If he was able to light up that sun, then Sun Guardian Yang Jingjing wouldn't have to be eaten by Sun's ship. Qin Mu had become Moon Guardian once and knew how terrifying it was to have his life force absorbed by Moon's ship. He was quite concerned about the Sun Guardian and didn't want her to die just like that. If he could light up the sun on Sun's ship, he would definitely do it. He rose into the sky and flew quickly to the ceiling of the shrine. The interior of this shrine was extremely vast. When Qin Mu exerted all his strength to sprint to the sky and planned to pluck the sun down, he didn't expect for it to become more and more scorching the closer he came, making him unable to withstand the heat. His body trembled, and he executed Mars Sovereign's Fire Marquis True technique, transforming into a bull-headed human-bodied form of Mars Sovereign which was stepping on 2 flame dragons. Like that, he continued to close in on the sun. The closer he got, the higher the temperature was, and tears started to flow out from his eyes due to the dazzling light. However, they instantly evaporated. He stared with his eyes wide open at the sun which was getting closer and closer. He saw that this treasure was actually a huge eyeball that was emanating blazing fire energy. It seemed to be refined from an eye of a strange beast whose pupil could still be seen. That pupil presented a perfect circle, and the terrifying fire energy and dazzling light shot out from nowhere else but that pupil. Before he could get close, he felt a stinging pain as if he was stabbed by countless needles. Qin Mu hurriedly descended, with the light from that pupil shining like burning needles. If he proceeded forward without careful consideration, he would either be melted by the high temperature or be shot to death by the sunlight. Thump! Qin Mu landed on the ground and swayed his tail with a pensive look. Cai Yunxiang and Ling Yuxiu were astonished as they examined him up and down. Cai Yunxiang mustered her courage and stretched her hand to touch Qin Mu's large and firm-fleshed bull buttocks that were as round as those of a hippopotamus. She cried out, "It's a real butt! Princess Xiu, try touching it as well." "No way." Even though Ling Yuxiu said so, she also stretched her hand out to touch Qin Mu's bull buttocks. "It's a real butt." The princess then said in astonishment, "How fleshy!" Piak. Qin Mu swayed his tail and slapped the hands of the two girls away as he walked out of the shrine. The two girls held their hands in pain and looked at the cow that great cult master Qin had transformed into. When his fleshy buttocks trembled as he walked, they couldn't resist wanting to grope them. Qin Mu came to the outside of the shrine, and the two flames dragons beneath his feet suddenly soared into the sky. He flew to the roof of the shrine and removed a glazed roof tile. This shrine was extraordinary, and each tile was imprinted with rune markings. Even if they received attacks of divine arts or spirit weapons, they would be hardly damaged. After a moment, Qin Mu removed several glazed roof tiles, and light shone out from inside. He smiled. "As I thought, the back of the eye doesn't give out light." Cai Yunxiang raised her head to have a look and saw an incomparably huge bull head popping in from the outside, appearing behind the back of the sun. A huge hand then stretched out and grabbed that sun in the sky. With a gentle shake, the sun was extinguished. The inside of the shrine instantly turned slightly dimmer, but when the girls raised their heads up to take a look, they could see the light from the stars becoming clearer and brighter, with the starlight and the moonlight shining over each other. If it was the outside world, it would definitely be a situation where the moon was bright and the stars were scarce. However, the moonlight and starlight here decorated each other and made the starry sky in the shrine even more charming. Qin Mu didn't return to the shrine. Instead, a bull head soon appeared behind the moon and plucked it away. The two girls were slightly angered. "This wet blanket, he doesn't understand any amorous feelings. If it was under this shrine's moonlight and starlight, you would just have to say some nice things and that's it. Wouldn't it just be you and me? Of course, I'd first have to chase away that vixen beside me first." Soon after that, Ling Yuxiu and Cai Yunxiang heard the sound of tiles piling up, and the sky in the shrine gradually disappeared. A bull head would pop up from time to pluck down the stars. They slowly decreased in number, until an hour after the sky had been opened up, the stars, sun, and moon had all been plucked down by Qin Mu. The two girls came out of the shrine and saw a mountainous pile of luminous pearls and two large eyeballs with covered pupils. These two eyes were about 3 yards tall, so they were much taller than them. They seemed to be made of jade and didn't look like real eyes, so they should have been sculpted from fine jade. Ling Yuxiu went up and saw that there were numerous markings that were extremely complicated in the eyes. They were most likely the marks of a formation. The eyes were down, which closed the formation in the pupil so it became a white line. The pupil couldn't be seen, only vein lines that scattered out like golden rays shining from the sun. The two girls touched them and felt an icy cold at their fingertips. It completely didn't feel like it had been blazing with fire energy earlier. "I thought they were the eyes of a Daotai, yet they are made of jade." Cai Yunxiang was slightly disappointed. Qin Mu was standing behind one of the eyes and playing with it. They didn't know what he was doing with it when the pupil of that eye suddenly opened up a crack, looking like an erected apricot. The two girls immediately saw an incomparably complicated formation being activated at the opening of the pupil. It was like an intricate mechanism formed from countless gears, and the next instant, a terrifying flame emerged from the pupil that burned more and more furiously. Their eyes cracked from the burn when their gazes landed on it. Cai Yunxiang hurriedly pulled Ling Yuxiu away, and the two girls avoided looking at the eye. With a whoosh, a beam of snow-white light shot out from the pupil and ignited the air. Along the path of light, all the white marble slabs on the ground had been instantly turned into lava, and even that lava was evaporating. The beam of light hit a few pieces of glazed roof tiles, yet even though those glazed roof tiles also had rune markings, they were instantly vaporized. Ling Yuxiu jumped in shock. If I was hit by this beam of light, wouldn't I have died already? Luckily Saintess Xiong pulled me away. Qin Mu continued to fiddle with the back of the eye, so the two girls walked around to see that it was actually a formation that was marked with runes. The formation wasn't complicated, but it was hard to see what type it was exactly. Qin Mu was using his vital qi to adjust the formation. With his adjustments, the pupil of this jade eye gradually opened up to the sides, and the fire energy blazed more and more furiously. It was like the sun scattering its heat in all directions, making them feel a heatwave that was hard to endure even when standing at the back of the eye. "Close your eyes," Qin Mu said with a grave expression. "I've opened the full power of the formation in this eye and now I'm ready to close the eye into a slit to test out the power of this spirit weapon." Spirit weapon? While the two girls were slightly stunned, Qin Mu controlled the formation to shrink the pupil, making the light become incomparably bright. Ling Yuxiu and Cai Yunxiang immediately closed their eyes. Even with closed eyes, they were still able to see a terrifying beam of light slicing out like an extremely thin blade. Qin Mu stopped the formation and heard a hum coming from the jade eye. The light then vanished, and the fire energy in the surroundings also gradually faded away. The two girls opened up their eyes, but there was still darkness in front of their eyes. Such extreme brightness resulted in darkness as their eyes had been damaged by the burn. Even though they didn't look at the light directly, the light from the jade eye had still damaged their pupils through the eyelids. Luckily for them, their vital qi was dense and this kind of damage could self-healed. Qin Mu walked out from the back of the eye and looked up. He couldn't help being stunned when he saw that the shrine in front of them had been sliced through the center by the blade of light from the jade eye. Even though the shrine was still standing tall, it might collapse at any moment. Furthermore, in the sky of this underwater world, there was a mark of the blade across the sky. A huge crack had opened up on the barrier that was supporting the pressure from the bottom of the sea, and the seawater was already starting to leak inside. Qin Mu stroked his chin and forcefully pulled out a few strands of beard he had grabbed. The youth sucked in a mouthful of cold air from the pain, but it wasn't a physical pain. It was his heart that was hurting. By testing the power of the jade eye just then, he had accidentally broken the barrier of this strange underwater world, and in a few days, the seawater would flood this place to the brim. Cai Yunxiang looked as a few droplets landed on the shrine, and that building which looked to be extremely stable instantly creaked, as if unable to handle the weight. The shrine started to lean in two sides, and with two loud rumbles, it split in half. Dust and smoke permeated the air, revealing humongous bones of a beast. These were the bones of a Dao Tai? That creature had been a pureblood, but its bones were also sliced into two by the beam. Once the shrine collapsed, the bones of the Dao Tai were revealed, and they were extremely huge. The heavenly kings were right, Cult Master Qin really demolishes everything wherever he goes, Cai Yunxiang muttered. Ling Yuxiu was also exclaiming what a pity to herself. This was a shrine, a mysterious underwater world, and it was destroyed by the fiddlings of Qin Mu just like that. The one that herds cows, you have a name but not a nickname yet, so let me give you a nickname. Let's call you Demolisher, Demolisher Qin. Ling Yuxiu suggested. Qin Mu's heart was still in pain when his face blushed from hearing what Ling Yuxiu had said, and he tried to explain, I'm not Demolisher Qin, I didn't demolish anything, don't talk nonsense and spoil my innocence. Cai Yunxiang sneered, you are innocent? The moment you reached Saint Arrival Mountain, you demolished the Hall of Three Kings. Ling Yuxiu sneered as well, you have demolished scholars' residence at least 3 times, right? The palaces around Temple of Heaven have also been demolished by you leading Heaven Devil Cull. And also, I've heard Heaven Wave City was also demolished by you. Just look, we came here moments ago, and this underwater world has already been demolished by you. This underwater world has probably stood here for tens of thousands of years, but is gone the moment you came. In a bad mood, Qin Mu muttered, don't talk nonsense, don't talk nonsense. The two girls teased Great Cult Master Qin and went to scavenge the collapsed shrine for anything useful. After a moment, Ling Yuxiu carried two huge pillars over and placed them in front of Qin Mu. These two huge pillars were probably tens of thousands of pounds heavy, yet she was able to carry them with brute force. Cai Yunxiang praised, "Fat people are truly strong. I'm not like Princess Xiao, I'm too weak to even stand up to the wind." Ling Yuxiu went into a frenzy and wanted to push this saintess onto the ground to give her a good beating. However, since Qin Mu was at the side, it wasn't good for her to do this. She gritted her teeth and smiled. "That's right, Saintess Xiong is indeed too weak to even stand up to the wind. You're too skinny and there are not even two tails of flesh in front of your chest." Cai Yunxiang was angered, and her gaze became unpleasant. "I'm still young and growing. What's the use of being so big? Ain't it still going to sag when one becomes old?" The two girls stared at each other before averting their gazes. "Great Cult Master, do you think you can refine these two pillars into spirit weapons?" Ling Yuxiu asked gently. Qin Mu was currently checking the other Jade Eye and trying to understand the marvel of operating such things, so he hadn't listened to what they were fighting about. This kind of metal is rarely seen. It seems like it has different metals mixed into it, and because of this its quality and flexibility are much stronger than those of winter crystal iron. Qin Mu checked the two pillars and was rather astonished. The divine arts practitioners of Eternal Peace Empire usually looked for the level of purity in refining their spirit weapons, but these two pillars didn't care about purity. By mixing different kinds of metal with the copper, the strength and flexibility of the pillars had been greatly increased. "Can you refine the 9 dragons' weapons I require?" Ling Yuxiu asked immediately. "Can." Qin Mu was full of confidence. "My smithing skills are great, I'm not lying." He activated the formation in Sun Jade Eye and smelted one of the copper pillars to forge a huge hammer first. He then let Ling Yuxiu exhibited the form of her spirit weapon and demonstrate all the changes of her 9 dragons' weapons. He pondered for quite some time and took out his brush and paper to draw the blueprints before starting to forge. 2 days later, Qin Mu finally finished forging 9 dragons' weapons. It was 9 dragons that could be combined together to form a huge hammer or separated to form 9 dragons' divine flames shroud by connecting their tails with one another. The bodies of the dragons were soft, and he had incorporated spirit creation technique into them while forging, so they could do numerous transformations. For example, even though the 9 dragons were made out of metal, there were over 900 pieces of bones in their bodies, allowing them to swim around in the air freely. Each and every one of the dragon scales stood alone and could also be detached from the bodies of the dragons. These scales were very sharp and could be used as solitary weapons. Other than the dragon scales, the dragon claws were like hooks that were abnormally sharp, and the dragon teeth were like blades. The 2 whiskers on each dragon were chains that were very soft, but strong and could chain people up. When the 9 dragons came together, they would become 9 dragons' golden wall. The scales would form the surface of the mirror, while behind it would be 9 dragon heads. Even if Cai Yunxiang and Ling Yuxiu didn't have many attainments in forging, they could still see that the 9 dragons' weapons that Qin Mu had forged was indeed exceptional. This weapon should be very suitable for Ling Yuxiu. The princess rushed over excitedly and transformed her vital qi into runes to mark onto the 9 dragons' weapons, using her vital qi to nourish it. After trying it out for a moment, she felt that it was easy to control it, and it could transform into another shape she wanted at any time. "Not bad, not bad." Ling Yuxiu praised endlessly. "The one that herds cows, your craftsmanship ain't bad. It's just a tiny bit inferior to that of Assistant Minister of Ministry of Works." Cai Yunxiang looked over enviously and exhibited the form of her spirit weapon, which was a thread that had a myriad transformations. How would one expect a well-tempered steel to become so soft that it could coil around the fingers? To forge a spirit weapon to the extent where it can coil around the finger is not as simple as just beating the metal. "Cult Master, my spirit weapon is called Thousand Silks, and it's a sword and also a spell. What it imitates is the great educational heavenly devil scriptures of our heavenly saint cult, so could Cult Master refine a metal to be as soft as silk?" Qin Mu examined the form of her spirit weapon and frowned. Refining such a sword that's as fine as silk while still having to forge the spell imprints on it poses some difficulty. I have learned it before, but I have never tried forging it. Let me try. Cai Yunxiang's 1,000 silks was much more troublesome than Ling Yuxiu's 9 dragons' weapons. It was much finer and required the metal to be hammered to the extreme limits of its flexibility before spreading it out to forge a metal membrane that was much thinner than natural silk. The thickness of natural silk was at one side, while behind side there was still Hu, Wei, Xian, Shao, Chen, Ai, Miao, Mo, and even finer thicknesses. Qin Mu could only spread the metal membrane to the thickness of Chen and Ai. Any finer, and he wouldn't be able to do it. When the thickness reached such a step, it would require markings that were even more intricate. Qin Mu and Cai Yunxiang both cultivated great educational heavenly devil scriptures, so the two of them painstakingly worked together to imprint all the runes on the metal membrane. While they were doing that, the membrane broke a few times and he had to reforge it. After that, Qin Mu folded the metal membrane carefully and began to temper it again before spreading it open once more to re-imprint the runes. After doing that over and over again, he finally managed to forge 1,000 silks. Cai Yunxiang's heart moved and 1,000 silks transformed into a ribbon which tied itself around her waist. The seawater in the underwater world gradually became deeper, and they couldn't stay there for much longer. Qin Mu immediately transformed his vital qi into a thread and wrapped the 2 jade eyes and stars with a net while saying, "Let's go up." The 3 of them hurriedly rushed toward the huge cauldron, and Cai Yunxiang's eyes shone when she came close. She tried to lift the cauldron up to take it away, but how could she do that when the cauldron was unimaginably heavy? Even with all her strength, it didn't budge an inch. "Your chest is small, so you're weak," Ling Yuxiu snickered. "Come try it with your big chest then," Cai Yunxiang retorted angrily. Ling Yuxiu went forward, but she hadn't expected that the cauldron would be so heavy that even she couldn't lift it. Her face blushed uncontrollably. Qin Mu shook his head. "This cauldron spews out so much spirit water, and it comes up 5,000 yards above to the spring. The weight of the water spewed out from the cauldron could probably match the weight of a mountain, and there's also the weight of the cauldron itself. This item is definitely a divine artifact, so you can drop the thought of taking it away." The 2 girls sighed in pity and followed Qin Mu to swim upwards. After some time, they floated up to the water surface. Ling Yuxiu smiled and said, "We had gotten quite a few treasures this time, so it wasn't a wasted trip." "How many treasures did Princess get? What kind of treasures are they?" A voice came from the side of the pond, and the 3 of them hurriedly looked over. They saw Long Jiaonan sitting on the head of a huge red snake. The beast's large body was circled around the pond. Long Jiaonan revealed a smile, and her gaze went from one face to another. She said to Qin Mu, "How wonderful of Cult Master, giving me such an exercise to find you." "Die?" Ling Yuxiu and Cai Yunxiang smacked the waves and rushed into midair, activating their 9 dragons' weapons and 1,000 silks to attack Long Jiaonan without any explanation. This video will end here.